Perfect. Welcome to Give Black, Give Back Conversations. We host this conversation to explore the many facets of Black philanthropy and how philanthropy embraces the Black or impacts the Black community. I'm your co-host, Lisa Swift-Young, and today I have one of our newest board members, Alfonzo Alexander. So before we get started, we also have a very fabulous guest. We're going to hold that for just a second, but I'm going to let you know. So this initiative was started by Kia, Jarman, and I, and we founded to serve the Black philanthropists who have funds at the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. And so the conversation around Give Black, Give Back kind of started that way. We actually have a fund assigned as the very same name, and a podcast. So if this is your first time coming, thank you so much for participating. We really honored to have you here. If not, you can go back and check out some of our previous conversations. We've talked to many people in the African American community here in Nashville, as well as throughout the country. And now you'll get some really good information about Black philanthropy and this initiative and our collaboration with the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. So our three-pronged message is to give Black, give back is threefold. So we want to promote Black-led funds, we want to advance Black-led nonprofits, and to educate the ways to decrease the wealth gap. We also serve as a resource or amplifier for the Black-led funds at the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. And we also support efforts of nonprofits who are run and serve the Black community. We also build sustainable philanthropy. We have a conversation around the difference between philanthropy and charity, which we'll get into a little bit more. This conversation is really important because this is week three of Black Philanthropy Month. Black Philanthropy Month is a global initiative that was started by Dr. Jackie Copeland back in 2011 and her co-architects to have a global initiative to honor and celebrate the hundreds of years of legacy of Black people across the diaspora and their giving. For the past 4 years, we've been celebrating here in Nashville, and we're glad to have you here with us. We are super excited today to have we hope that you would claim the word philanthropy. So if you have any questions and I went too fast or you want to know a little bit more about it, go to blackgivingback.com. You'll get all the information there and kind of go from there. So before we turn on today's topic, I'm going to give you my co-host. So my co-host today is Alfonzo Alexander. He is the Chief Ethics and Diversity Officer at NSBA. And he's also the president of NASBA, the Center for Public Trust. He serves as the Chief Ethics Diversity Officer. He is the president and oversees the ethics of leadership in organizations and day-to-day operations going through CPT, which I'll have you go into a little bit more what CPT is. In addition, he's a regional manager for the Southeast region of Enrose, Inc., where he leads operations and business development in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. So he's quite busy. So we are really honored to have him here today because we know he could be a lot of different places if he was not here. So thank you so much for that. Before that, he was with Quaker Oats. He is the vice chair of the PhD project. So if you're interested in that, there's a ton of stuff in the bio, so check him out. He has been very active in the Nashville community through multiple different organizations, 100 Black Men, Christian Athletes in Middle Tennessee, Tennessee Tech Business College Advisory Board, so a ton of people. But our guest today, we're super excited, is we have Janet Kincherlow-Martin. And she is the director of fund development at the Urban League of Middle Tennessee. I'm going to give you a plug for her because you may need her sooner than you think. Her phone number is 615-254-0525. We'll also let her give a chance to maybe get you connected with her social as well. So she currently serves as a director of fund development at the Urban League. And she's taken that position just a few months ago. So really super excited about see what's happening there at the Urban League. Before that, she was with United Way. So for those of you who are looking around and going, I think I know her. She was with Rutherford and also Cannon counties where she worked. And then before that, she was working with Nissan, General Mills, Bridgestone, Ingram, Middle Tennessee Electric, TVA. So she's been around quite a bit. and she's really good at raising money. I have on her bio, she's raised over $1.5 million annually, which, so hey, you're looking for somebody to raise some money. She is a proud graduate of Middle Tennessee State, where she holds a bachelor's in public relations and an MBA from Faulkner. She is a mom, which I always kind of go with that because that's like that's a whole nother job. She's also a Delta. She has two sons, Ryan and Broderick, who's deceased, and the proud grandmother of four grandsons, Landon, Houston, and Jackson, and a new granddaughter, Harlan. So I know she is something special running all those boys. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Because Alfonso has not been on before, I want everyone to know your origin story for philanthropy. So talk a little bit about where that comes from, where your passion comes from that, and then we'll get the same information from Janet to kind of get where, because I know she has a little bit different spin because of her background, but I'll let you go first, Alfonso.
Sure. Thank you. And I am so happy to be here. Looking forward to talking with you both, Lisa and Janet. Excited about this opportunity. I do want to make one slight amendment. I am formerly with Inroads. So the role that you mentioned there was in a previous life. I'm still the Chief Ethics and Diversity Officer at NASBA, but then also serve as the President and CEO of the Alexander Success Group, which is a leadership and strategy organization where we do work with companies all across the country. So really excited about our work. You asked me to reference the NASBA Center for Public Trust too. That is an ethics and leadership organization that is a nonprofit that's based here in Nashville also, where we work with college students and others, but primarily college students, on helping them understand how to get into the marketplace and lead with ethics versus getting caught up into fraud and other things that are prevalent in business society today. But my journey as it relates to philanthropy is really pretty interesting. But I'll give you guys a short version. We can talk in more detail later. Back in probably 2000, I was inspired by a proverb where I learned that it is a responsibility for me to leave an inheritance for my children and my children's children. But to be able to do that and to be able to save and start to accumulate and build wealth, I also learned and made the connection through revelation spiritually that I have to be a giver first. And saving and building can happen, but first I have to give. So my journey started with finding a church that I was comfortable tithing in, because I saw what that church was doing in the community. And then I got involved in that church and began to tithe in that church. And then as my income level grew, then I expanded that to other organizations that I was involved with because I believed in their mission, and then began to give to them. And for me, philanthropy is so important that in our family, we put things on auto. So the organizations that we're committed to and that we give to and that we believe in, particularly because they support African Americans or they're driven by African Americans, they're on auto. They get a check every month, regardless of the level of involvement that we have in them. But then there are other organizations that are created for majority populations, and they may have some specific programs for African American, particularly youth. Then we give with designated funds to those organizations. But I can't emphasize enough that our giving, our philanthropic efforts are really focused on organizations that we believe in and that we are committed, not only in terms of our finances, but in terms of our actual physical involvement as well. And that's what we believe makes a difference in being philanthropic versus just a donor.
Right. Thank you for sort of making that an engaged person, a person who's engaged and who's very intentional. So that's definitely something to aspire to. So thank you so much. And as you can see, we have an illustrious person on our board who speaks, not only sits on the board, but he actually does a philanthropy. So Janet, tell me a little bit about your origin story for philanthropy. Where does it kind of start? And your whole concept has been around nonprofits. So I'm really super interested to see how you got started.
Lisa, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. And I wanted just to kind of make a little bit of addition, I guess, to my background. So the companies that you list are companies that I work directly with through United Way, Yates, Ingram, those companies. But I also have a pretty long background in fundraising for education, for higher education in particular. And so I think that my whole philosophy as far as giving and philanthropy goes back to childhood. I was raised in a household that believed, first of all, what Alfonso said in generational wealth, and that you start that as early as possible. My father was born during the Depression, and so individuals who were born during that time had a whole different philosophy as far as saving. But he also said that in order, as Alfonso said, in order to save, you must also have a spirit of giving. Mm-hmm. And so my introduction to philanthropy and to giving started way back. We always supported things, of course, the church first. And then, as Alfonso said, things in the community, because I grew up in a very, very small community. So there weren't a lot of opportunities to necessarily support those organizations outside the NAACP that focus primarily on people of color. So that came a little later in life. But I'm a very firm believer that you start at home, giving starts at home. And if you grow up in that kind of environment, and that's the same kind of environment that I've tried to instill in my children and my grandchildren, that, you know, just because you've been provided a certain level of opportunity in your life, that does not mean that you take that for granted, and that you also are expected to share what you have with others. And that's just it's just a philosophy that I've always lived with. And so it makes it easy to do what I do. A lot of people say, oh, I can never ask people for money. But I don't feel that's what I don't feel like I ask people for money. I feel like that people have resources, whether it's $1 or, you know, $1 million. They have resources, and they also have passions and interests. So I always say to people, I feel like I'm a matchmaker. I help match your resources with your interest. And that's just kind of the way I've approached fundraising and fund development my entire career.
That's really super interesting. I thank you guys both. Thank you for sharing. Both you guys, thank you for sharing. I think that speaks to, you know, one of the reasons we got started with Black Philanthropy, and one of the reasons I believe Dr. Copeland wanted to highlight Black Philanthropy Month, is because the Kellogg Foundation, we quote this, so if you guys have been following us before, I'm going to keep remembering so everyone knows it, but African Americans give $11 billion a year to charity every year. So not overall, not encompassing, but every year. So we are listed as the most philanthropic group demographic, if you're looking at it that way. Now, there is a wealth gap, so we don't give as much as far as money, but we do give about 25% more than our white counterparts do, you know, who are in the same vein. But because we have less money, then it's less money overall. And so that speaks, you guys kind of go right into that. So I think that number seems big, but I think every guest we have on talks about how they gave, how they started in church, how they kind of give that piece. You know, Alfonso, you kind of amped it up and really kind of put some structure to it. But that's just one of the things about Black Philanthropy Month. We want to make sure it's a perfect opportunity to have both of you guys on, because you have that next level understanding of what philanthropy is. So thank you guys so much for sharing. So Janet, specifically nonprofit management, because you've been working in that space for quite a while. How does that work? Because we're going to talk a little bit about today's conversation is really about corporate social responsibility and how to get that, how to maybe maximize those opportunities. And so this is your wheelhouse. This is where you know, you're the expert here. So we're super excited about hearing a little bit how you got involved in nonprofit management.
Well, it started, I had 2 different stints with United Way. And then, like I said, I spent a lot of time in higher education, in external relationships. So I did governmental relations, I did PR and marketing, I did fundraising, and all those sort of kind of go together, because you have to establish a brand and people have to know who you are and what you are in order to be able to have the desire to support you. And so I found that just through the different kinds of positions I've had in those different spaces, there's a lot of things that are the same. To me, matchmaking, and I want to call it matchmaking as opposed to fundraising, is matchmaking regardless of the area and the space that you're doing it in. Again, it just goes back to people have resources and they sometimes need help matching their resources with their passions. Alfonso mentioned a little earlier about some of the organizations that he supported that were majority organizations that may support something in the community that he's interested in. A lot of them do support youth development and education related things. And so I found that if you, whether it's an individual donor or a corporation or a foundation, there are particular focus areas that those individuals who are giving of their resources want to focus on. And so in order to, I think, get the biggest bang for your buck and to get them on board with you, you have to know what those focus areas are, because if their focus area is the environment and you're talking to them about higher education, nah. And so you need to do a lot of research, which, you know, it's a kind of a cultivation and relationship building process. And a lot of people go into fundraising thinking, okay, I can meet with somebody one time and ask them for their money. And that's not going to happen. And if they do give you some money after that first meeting, that's all you're going to get. It's all about relationship building. I heard something early on in my career that I still hold dear, and I still believe. Individuals give to people. They don't give to organizations. Organizations give to people. They don't give to organizations. So once you get that relationship, it makes it a lot easier to have that conversation about what they want to support and to what level they want to support. And a lot of, and this may be something you're going to ask me later, but I'll just sort of kind of touch on it and we can do some more conversation about it if we need to go to do a little deeper dive. But in the corporate space, a lot of individuals that work for some of these larger companies that have matching programs and that have foundations don't know that they can make their dollar go even farther, because those organizations that they work for do matching gifts. Some of them, even that I've worked with in the past, even do a one-to-one match. So for instance, if you give $500, they're going to give $500. So that organization that you're supporting benefits because they get $1,000 gift. And something that a lot of people don't know about foundations, that they are required to give a certain amount of their money back every year. And a lot of people don't know that. And just, again, doing that research and finding out what resources are out there makes this kind of job a lot easier.
Perfect. That was definitely a great lead in. Alfonso, do you have I know you also played in this space as well. Do you have sort of another sort of follow-up question to that matching program? Because I do think that's a big piece that people are really missing. Nissan, I don't know what the statistics are, and you guys might actually know this, which companies in the area, Bridgestone, Nissan, ACA, all those companies out there, a lot of them do have matching programs. So if you're listening and you work for those organizations, your $15, $20, $30, $50 now gets doubled, and we can actually give, and you can give to a Black-led fund that's in the 501(c) arena and get those dollars there. Alfonso, I'll let you sort of follow up on question.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of matching programs, and they can be very effective. Too often employees don't take advantage of them, whether it's they don't know or they don't want to complete the paperwork or what have you. But I just want to add another twist to that. Also, some companies may have a corporate giving committee, and they make determinations on what organizations they contribute to. If you are involved in a Black organization or you support a Black organization, that's exactly what those committees are looking for, organizations that their employees are already invested in, whether that's time or talent or funding. Those are the ones that you can go to that committee and say, hey, I'm involved in this. Would you support this organization? And the way the organization looks at it, or the way the company would look at it as, I'm not just supporting that organization, which I really don't know a lot about. I'm supporting my coworker, I'm supporting my employee. So I would encourage anybody listening, if you're involved in some organizations, look to see if your company has the ability, whether it's through matching or whether it's through their corporate giving program or committee, to get support from your organization that you work with.
And Lisa, just one
Perfect.
other point about corporations and having, those kinds of matching gifts or committees. A lot of corporations also have foundations. So it's outside the private foundation world. And again, as Alfonso was saying, those foundations have been established by their employee giving, oftentimes. And so in order for an organization to be able to, a nonprofit to be able to apply to those company-led foundations, there has to be some sort of connection. Either their employees have to have volunteered for that particular nonprofit, or they're already giving to that nonprofit. And again, if an employee knows that, then it makes the entree for that nonprofit a lot easier, because there's familiarity with that nonprofit. You're just not starting from, ground zero.
Perfect. This is a great segue into, we talk about the 5 T's of giving. So time, talent, we know time, right? So giving your time, giving your treasure. We all know about that, giving your money, time, talent, and treasure. But then we also talk about truth and testimony. And so that volunteering and having a conversation with your organization and letting them know that you're involved, you can get them to sort of fund that organization. So it gives you a great opportunity. So maybe you don't have a lot of, money as far as treasure, but you have time, and that time can be translated into treasure from the organization, because now you can say, I put in so many hours. So now can the company sort of support, this particular organization? If you don't know of a Black-led fund, we have a list for you at blackgivingback.com. There are Black-led funds as well as nonprofits there that you can sort of start to work with. Obviously, the Urban League is an option. And so, get involved. I'm sure Janet would love to have you come in and give you some of your time. And we can translate it over, and we can walk you through to get some funding. I know Clifton, we had a conversation a couple of years ago, I think right after the pandemic, and he was talking about that the Urban League was not getting a ton of money from corporations prior to the pandemic. I think that has switched a little bit now, but it's switched a lot.
I like it too, so I want to say that too.
That's because of Janet. That's because of
right,
Janet.
because of Janet. Alfonso, I would love to take credit for that, but only having been on the team for about 3 months, Clifton may take exception to that. So.
But the point being is that putting the word out there that that he is available. That the Urban League was available, and really having that conversations. I know we have a fund, my husband and my 2 adult children and I have a fund there. And we found out that we really started to be like, oh, we just assumed they were getting this money, but that plays into exactly what we talk about. When this money comes out, it doesn't go to Black-led organizations. Literally, when these big grants come out and this big money comes out from the Gates Foundation or Buffett or Branson or whoever has the money does it, 1 to 3% goes to Black-led organizations until they know, and we're out there doing some of our time and talent with them to say, hey, Urban League, NAACP, all these organizations on blackgivingback.com, we can really make an impact there. So, yeah.
And Lisa, I'll also say too, something that you as you were talking, it made me think about it. People also need to be careful too. If you want to give to an organization that is in your community, be very careful, because a lot of people think when they give to Urban League, if they give to Urban League nationally, it doesn't necessarily drill down to their local community. So they have to make sure that they designate that they want that money to stay in their local community. The same thing with United Way. Most United Ways will give you the option that you can either give, generally to United Way, or you can designate your funds. But again, be careful in that you're designating the funds to the organization or community that you want those funds to go to, because if not, it sort of kind of goes in a big pot and doesn't always necessarily drill down to your local community.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I think that's what we're talking about. Yeah, Alfonso.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. I think for any philanthropist to know and understand that, he or she has the ability to direct completely 100% where the funds that are donated go. And even if there is within the Urban League of Middle Tennessee, for example, if there's a specific program that you want to contribute $15,000 a year to, hint, hint, make it known that that's where you want that $15,000 a year to go to. And the Urban League will do everything it can to make sure that those funds are used specifically as you requested. And I think that's a big, sometimes that's a hurdle for Black philanthropists because they think they're going to use my money to do something different. But as a philanthropist, you can designate 100% where you want your funds to go. And the organization may have a policy that says 10% has to go to some admin fee or what have you, but they will share that with you and you can negotiate whether or not you want to do that or not.
Exactly. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's all about that matching your resources with your interest.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So I know, why do you think it's important to give Black-led? I want people to really understand why. We kind of have nailed it down, but I want to be very intentional about why Black-led foundations or funds or nonprofits. Why do you think that's particularly important? Because Janet, you have an illustrious career, and so you know how these things work through United Way. And Alfonso, I'm sure you can chime in as well. Why do you think Black-led foundations and nonprofits should be the focus of African Americans specifically?
Well, I think just from my years of experience and just personal experience, oftentimes the community doesn't necessarily understand the overall community. And because of that, African American organizations and those that represent other people of color and underrepresented communities don't understand the impact that those groups, our groups, are making in community. We make up a large portion of the community, thus we impact the community. And I always look at fundraising, not just from the matchmaking perspective, but I see it as an investment. If you're going to invest in your community, you have to invest in your entire community. You have to look at where resources are going, and you have to look at the impact those resources are making. So if we're not investing in our whole community, then our whole community is not going to invest in us. And there's so many things that services and programs, and I often try to stay away from the word programs because sometimes programs can have a negative connotation, but there's so many things that Black-led organizations do in a community to rise that community up, that oftentimes if we're not out there ringing our own bell, we get the leftovers. And I worked for a time for an HBCU, a historical Black college university. And I worked during a time when the business manager had been there for a long time when I started working at the organization. And he said he remembered the time when he had to go before the state legislature and basically beg for funding for a state-supported institution, and always felt like that, that institution got the crumbs that was left over, yet that institution was making a big impact in the state where I worked. And if we're going to continue to do that and to make the impact in the community, we've got to have resources just like everybody else. And so we need to have
That's a great point.
We need to have a seat at the table. We've got a program right now at the Urban League, and here I go using the word program. We have an initiative at the Urban League. It's called the Red Academy, Real Estate Developers Academy. Mm-hmm. And the whole purpose of that academy, the reason it was established, and it was established through a very generous grant from Amazon. The reason it was established is to give those amazing developers a seat at the table. So when we see these big projects happening in Nashville and Davidson County, those individuals can be at the table from the beginning because they have so much to offer. And so we're not, sitting back saying, well, why weren't we involved in this particular project? Well, because we didn't know. So if we're investing in our own, then we're beginning to bring our folks to the table so that the knowledge and skill level that we have can be a part of the community.
Sure. And another point to that, I think that's a great example. But another point too is that, we need to invest in Black nonprofit organizations because they don't have the brand awareness. So, they're a handful of the national, your organization, NAACP, many of the HBCUs, but there are thousands of other Black owned or started or run nonprofit organizations that don't have that national brand, who are doing great work and need the opportunity to get some of those resources. So it is incumbent upon us to support those organizations as well, because they're not going to be known by some of these larger organizations that can fund them. And so that's where, in addition to us giving, us being engaged and making aware opportunities that exist within those organizations is paramount. So it's as simple as an example. We all, because we live in Nashville and we're African American, we've all heard of Slim and Huskies, for example, to borrow a for-profit example, right? We've heard of them, but if we stack that brand up nationally versus Pizza Hut or Papa John's or something like that, when investors look to invest, they know those brands, so they are more likely to invest in those brands than in a Slim Husky, for example, just because they don't know. So how do we help raise the awareness for an organization like that or for these nonprofits? Is we get involved and we support them because there's a need. The other piece of it is, you know, I talked about being strategic with what we do and what we support, and most of our work is in youth development. That's for a reason. It's because, you know, I was born to a single African-American woman who was in her teens. And I know some of the challenges that she faced raising me. And so I support organizations that work with Black boys or young men who are coming from lower income areas. Who better to know that work than somebody like me that's come through it? So I have to go back and help organizations like that, or I'm doing it in service to people like my mother.
Exactly.
That's what I think Black philanthropists have the opportunity to do.
And Alfonso, to that point, you know, we look to our board of directors, because I tell everybody, a lot of us know some of the same people, but you also have your circle of influence. And as you were saying, it's incumbent upon us to talk to our circle of influence. And one of the things we tell our board members, in addition to, you know, your financial commitment, we also need you to be advocates for us, because within your circle of influence. And the more of us that do that, and as you were saying, talk about those organizations that may not be top of mind, and that people sometimes may know the work, but don't associate the work with that organization. It's up to us to make sure that they make that association. Because even with an organization like Urban League, who a lot of people have heard about, they don't always know what we do.
Right.
And I start explaining, since I'm relatively new, and a lot of my circle of influence and friends will say, okay, what does Urban League do? And when I start talking about what we're doing, they're like, oh, well, I know about that, but I didn't think the Urban League did it. I didn't know that the Urban League did that.
Sure.
And so again, the more we can talk about what those Black organizations do, the more education we can do, the more of us hopefully will be able to benefit from those resources that are out there.
Absolutely, 100%. And, you know, that's why I think it's important, the initiative that Audra is leading, you know, at the Center for Nonprofit, at the Community Foundation. I got nonprofit.
That's okay.
On the brand, but at the Community Foundation, you know, so, you know, go check out blackgivingback.com and the website, and you can see organizations that you can engage in, that you can support. And, you know, go look and see what the Urban League is doing, because there will be some initiatives there that you can support and get an understanding. If nothing else, start with getting an education about what these organizations are doing. And then, you know, you could adopt an approach where you don't write a check at all until you volunteered some, to really get a chance to see the impact that the organization is making on the people that particular initiative is designed to serve. So let me ask you another question, Janet. What are some myths out there that you think prevent people from contributing to nonprofit organizations that are Black run?
I think that some of those myths are the same myths that unfortunately many nonprofits are victim to. And you sort of kind of touched on a couple of them a little while ago. You give to an organization and you don't know what happens to your money. Or I give to an organization once because it's something that someone told me to do, but I don't have a relationship with that organization. And so I'm going to give this time just to get, you know, Joe over here off my back, but I'm not going to give again. And I think too, just because historically, again, a lot of people haven't been educated fully on what a lot of these Black organizations do, there's a level of mistrust that unfortunately is not true. But again, it goes back to us educating folks about what we do, that we are good, very good stewards of the money. And then too, it's incumbent upon those nonprofit organizations to tell our own story. Let people know what we've done in the community. It's okay to brag about what we do.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that we're going to be more intentional with at Urban League,
Mhm.
is telling people what we do, telling people the impact we make in their community. And a lot of smaller nonprofits don't necessarily have a vehicle to do that, or they don't know how to do that.
Right.
And so
right.
those of us who are in this space and can do that, can help them tell their story, I think is an important piece of this.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's why it's so important that we get involved with those organizations to help we may have some expertise that we can help them with. But then, as you mentioned earlier, like your board brings, when somebody on your board comes, they actually bring their network with them, whether they realize that or not. That's part of the reason why they're attracted to you as board members. And so helping to get that level of exposure out there and get people involved is very, very important. But I would also say organizations like the Community Foundation can be resources also. So the list of Black nonprofit organizations that is there at the Community Foundation is a great resource. And if you question anything about the operations of those organizations, to be listed there, you have to submit certain documentation. And so the screening is already done by the Community Foundation. And so that's a very, very important factor. Audra, would you mention what I'm referencing there?
Sure. Not a problem, Alfonso. We have, and both NASBA is listed as one of our 100 nonprofits in the Middle Tennessee area under the Give Black, Give Back tab that has a profile, excuse me, a Giving Matters profile that's updated annually, as well as the Urban League of Middle Tennessee. These nonprofits go through a rigorous, as you said, updating of their information, their 990s, their board changes, any changes in programmatic or things that they list for available for the community on their webpage has to be updated annually. We go through there and make sure that these are updated for not only for the community's sake, but for opportunities that corporations come to us as a clearinghouse looking for investment, people that they can invest in the community without going through a lot of bidding, because they know that we've done it on the front end. And it's an opportunity, as you said, for people to establish funds here, different type funds we have listed here. But then the nonprofits is sort of as you said, Jen, is a match, if you will, of taking people who are looking with people who are already in the community doing some of these good things and services that a lot of people just don't know about. And Alfonso, if I could ask you to share just a little bit more about NASBA, because as I said, you are one of our organizations under our tab of Middle Tennessee organizations that are maybe African-American CEO led, that give in the community and have a profile. All people need to know about you to a certain extent. They can come to our page and see the good work that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, the NASBA Center for the Public Trust.
Yes.
We refer to it as the CPT, but it is a program, organization, that's focused on ethical leadership. And in terms of the African American component that we have an HBCU initiative where we're partnering with 3 of the 4 HBCUs here in the Nashville, Middle Tennessee area, because they have undergraduate programs, but then 20 other HBCUs across the country right now, and that's growing every year, where we're putting in ethics and leadership programs within the business school or at the university level to try and help young people not get caught up in fraudulent or negative behavior when they hit the market. What happens with a lot of college students is they think that, you know, you hear about Enron and what the CEO and CFO did, and they think that the senior level executives are the ones that are involved in that, and they're immune to it. But the reality is, in all of the major fraud cases and then other unethical activities that don't even involve finances, they're young people that have been convinced to get involved in some of those things. And so our programming is to try and help them be better, so that they don't get caught up in any of that activity. So thanks for mentioning that.
Sure, and that's training and educating a different generation, right?
Absolutely. That's
Awesome.
absolutely what it is. So I know we're getting short on time, and Janet, I wanted to make sure to give you an opportunity to share with us how people can contact you or get involved with anything that's going on at the Urban League, and give us an opportunity to share your thoughts there.
Sure, Alfonso and Audra, thank you again for the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. If you didn't pick up on it, I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do, and I'm actually retired from higher education and moved to this area, still working clearly, because I love what I do. I think it's incumbent upon us to give back, and I feel like that this is a way for me to give back to the community. So it is not a job for me. It's a passion of mine. But as far as how people can give back, to the Urban League, there are several ways. One, of course, as Alfonso was saying, we want people to feel comfortable that an organization that they're supporting is something that they have a passion for. So we're always in need of good volunteers, because we are a nonprofit organization. Most nonprofits, unless you have huge staffs, and most of us don't, we're very reliant on volunteers. And so that's a very good kind of entree into finding out what we do. Of course, you know, we, as a nonprofit, finances and financial support is always very important to us. We have a number of ways for people to be a part of us, to invest in us. You can become a member, and there's different membership levels. We also have several scholarships that we provide to individuals. And so you can support one of those scholarships if you're so inclined. And then there's a different level for corporate support. But if they want to find more information about what we do, you can give me a call. My number is 615-254-0525. You can just ask for Janet. I'm the only Janet there. They can also go to our website, which is ULM as in Mary, T as in Tom, ULMT.org. We're located at 50 Vantage Way, and so we're open Monday through Thursday from 9 to 4, and then Friday hours vary, but they can certainly call the office or email me. My email is jmartin, JMARTIN at ULMT.org. And I try to respond to folks no less than 24 hours, or no more than 24 hours rather. I try to go in several times during the course of the day. Of course, you know, sometimes the email will come in, but I'm one of those folks that I try to respond to people very quickly. And so if you have an interest or a question about what we do, if you have a particular area of interest that you're interested in, let me know. We do a lot of workforce and economic development in the community. So if that is an area that you're interested in, we're always looking for folks to join us with that effort, as far as youth and leadership, and also social engagement. And so again, just give me a call, shoot me an email, be more than happy to talk with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Please go check out Janet and the work that they're doing at the Urban League. Some great work they've been doing for a long time.
55 years in this community this year.
How many?
55 years just in this community, 112 years nationally. So yeah. So, and I'm glad, Alfonso, you mentioned that, because again, it goes back to what you were saying about some of those myths about Black run nonprofits. We have histories in the communities that we serve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Audra, thank you for the work that you guys are doing at the Community Foundation. Really, blackgivingback.org. Go check it out. It's a wealth of information there. And I just encourage you, and Audra, thank you for all your work, and look forward to the next conversation that we have. And I'll kick it over to you, Audra, to close us out.
All right. Thank you, Alfonso. Thank you, Janet. This has been a very wealth of information for the community individuals who are looking to get involved in the national community, in the nonprofit arena, in the for-profit arena, in the giving back and the philanthropic arena. It's here. We're here. And to our co-hosts in their stead, we send kudos out to Lisa Swift-Young and Takia Jarman. And Alfonso, I can't thank you enough for being a part of our new team. And we're so excited to have you. And Janet, welcome to Nashville. And we're so looking forward to doing some great things with you in Clifton. Remember, blackgivingback.com, cfmt.org. Next week, we will have another fun-filled and inspiring conversation with our leaders and co-chairs. So check out our website and we'll see you then. All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Remember,
Bye.
give Black.